Okay, head back to episode 1. In this section, I'm going to show you how to use targets with the demo smoother. Targets are points of interest for the camera to look at. Really, they don't do a whole lot that you can't already do with keyframes, but there are a few situations they work better for. Okay, let's play the first demo again. Same thing as before. Go to the console, then play demo space demo 1. Did you know that a fungus has properties of both plants and animals? However, when it comes down to it, it's more like an animal than a plant. They can't create their own food the way plants can with photosynthesis, so they have to rely on consuming other organic matter to survive. So if you have any friends or relatives who are vegans, but they still eat mushrooms, you should give them a hard time about it. Alright, go and press Shift F2. Then let's pause this. Now go and reposition your windows like before, and do the same for the smoother window. You have to do this before you go into drive mode, otherwise you'll have to start your position over. Okay, now we can go into drive mode and fly around. I'll look at a dark background so you can see what's happening. Okay, in the last section I promised to explain what all these different values mean for processing. The spline angles and spline origins is what we covered in the last section. You're never going to go wrong using these options. In fact, some of the other processing methods require you to create them first. Moving up to the top, smooth selection angles and smooth selection origin is a little misleading. This behaves in a very similar way to spline angles and spline origin, except it doesn't do as good a job. It actually has jerkier results than what the spline values use, so there's really no reason to use it. Linear interpolation angles and origin is pretty simple to use, but there's not much point. What it does is take your first and last keyframe in your demo, averages their values, then averages them over the entire length of your demo rather than the times you selected. So what you end up with is a very slow-moving straight line that ignores all your curves and timings. I can't think of any situation where you would want this, since you could always just create 2 points with spline angles and origins and accomplish the exact same thing, but have much tighter control over what you're doing. Spline angles and origin, we already covered these. Next are look at points and look at points spline. These have to do with targets. I'd argue these are the only other values on this list worth using. We'll be covering how to use them in this lesson, so I'm going to skip them for now. Okay, all these 2-point origin values do more or less the same thing. These actually seem to do the opposite of what they say they'll do, but they will accelerate or decelerate your camera based on what you pick. Now that would be pretty useful, except it behaves like the linear interpolation values. It only takes the first and last values and makes the whole movement last the duration of your demo. Now you might be able to work around it by limiting the number of total ticks in your demo, but in my opinion it's a lot more trouble than it's worth, so we're going to be skipping it. You can accomplish similar results with the spline origin process anyway if you get your timings right. And finally, the auto setup key functions. This could have a practical function, but if it does, I'm still unconvinced. What this does is that say you already have a camera path laid out and ready to go. What this will do is create a new keyframe for you along that path every second or half second, whichever of these values you specify. While that could be good for fine-tuning, the problem is that the more keyframes you have, the more jerks you'll get in your camera when they're processed. So maybe if you want your camera to be real shaky like you were driving on a bumpy road, then this might do the job. Anyway, that covers the different processing options you have. Now we'll get started on how to use targets.